Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. Happy Friday, everybody. Dualta here, and in this podcast series, I will be speaking to investors, advisors, entrepreneurs, and recruiters who are based all over the world, and we'll be discussing how to set up, scale, and operate a world-class recruitment company. Today, I'm honoured to have Roy Ripper on the podcast, and yes, that is his real name. He is a recruitment expert and trainer, and he's been in the industry for what we joked has been around 1,000 years now. Roy knows more about recruitment than he's probably forgotten more about recruitment than I'll ever learn. So I really enjoyed asking him all the things I need to know to be able to take this podcast, any ideas that I have, where I want to go in my own career, my own businesses. And I really use this to pick his brain and get his thoughts on things. And he's one of these people that's been there, done it, and he can communicate the lessons learned from his journey. And he's really generous with his time and with his knowledge. And we had a great chat, and I'm really appreciative of his time. We're going to have a follow-up chat with some of the other guests that have been on the podcast, and we're going to create a bit of a roundtable series in the south of England. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, enjoy Roy. Happy hunting, everybody.
Hey, Dualta.
Roy, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Roy, first question.
Okay.
Is that your real name? Because I've got name envy.
You couldn't make this up, could you? Roy Ripper is my real name. Okay. I was christened Roy Ripper. And I did threaten my ex-wife to call our first son Jack Theo. She put her foot down, and it didn't result. But yeah, I'm definitely Roy Ripper.
Wow. Some famous people sound like in recruitment sound like pirates, don't they? You know, we could have like who else is on the boat with you? Obviously, Gary Goldsmith has his, but. Greg Savage as well, I was thinking.
Greg Savage, I know.
That's a great name for a pirate, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Who else could we have? Well, listen, you've got the whole alliteration thing going on. So you've got DD, I've got RR.
Yeah, I'd be like some poor peasant downstairs.
The cabin boy.
Yeah, or in the jail or something. You know, you'd be selling me to other pirates or something. All right, Roy. So we had a wee chat beforehand.
Yes.
And I could have ended up chatting to you for hours.
Thank you.
You're a man that's been doing things that I've been trying to do for an awful long time, and I want to jump into all of that. And there's 1,000 things I want to ask you. So right. I'm trying to get it all in order. But for me to do that, I think. Can we go back to where it started 1,000 years ago when you got into recruitment?
When I was 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, of course we can. Look, I like a lot of people. You always hear this story, don't you? I'm sure I'm not the first person to say I fell into recruitment, but I literally fell into recruitment in that I used a recruitment agency. So back in the day, I worked in retail, and I went to a retail specialist. Guy placed me, really good, and then that was it. I didn't hear from recruitment. I didn't even think about recruitment. Then years later, I was a boss. I started using a recruitment agency, and the consultant said, "Oh, my boss knows you. The MD of my company knows you." And it turns out this was this guy that had placed me years previously. Took me to lunch, said, "Look, you can make a fortune in recruitment. I swallowed the Kool-Aid, and that was back in, I don't know, 1987, something, some
Wow.
terrible year like that. Yeah, it was a long, 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 long time ago.
What was recruitment like in 1987? I
Oh,
was
mate,
I was four,
yeah,
by the way. So
yeah. Thanks for that, Dualta. That really does kind of make me feel good. What was recruitment like? Yeah, it's funny because I go into training sessions and coaching sessions, and people say to me, "What did you do without a computer?" I'm like, well, we had index boxes and we had lots of filing cabinets. If you speak to any recruiter over a certain age, they'll tell you their offices literally had wall-to-wall filing cabinets.
I worked for a firm in Canada 4 years ago now,
Okay.
and they had filing cabinets and all that. And when they brought them out a week into my kind of journey there, I
Yeah.
realized this is the wrong place for me.
Were they stuck in the Stone Age or something? Yeah.
Jesus, terrible, man. So what? So did you stay in the one firm for a long time? What was your kind of journey like?
Oh man, do you know
Let's not
what?
go through every year because
Yeah.
we'll be here all day, hey?
You're going to have a pop at me about my age all the way through. That's cool. Listen, that's cool. I like being the older statesman in recruitment.
You
Um,
are. You are.
um,
I'm the cabin boy. I told
yeah.
you. You know, I'm cleaning the floor.
So, so yeah.
Well,
Look,
you and
I
Greg
won't.
are sailing the seven seas.
No, I think Greg's on his own ship on that one. But listen, in terms of recruitment, yeah, I won't take you back to year by year, but I loved that first firm. I was in Regent Street in central London. Because I'd come from the market that I was placing in, which was retail, fashion, all that kind of stuff. I had an affinity with the candidates and clients, and to be honest with you, mate, it was the 80s. I made money just by waking up in the morning. But what I also did was, because of that affinity and rapport and everything else, I just found it so easy.
Hmm.
I
How
wasn't
how
particular. Yeah,
bold
go
were
on.
people in the 80s at work? Was it what it looks like on the TV with
Shoulder pads.
cigars and whiskey and the rest?
Oh, mate, yeah, and also I think that continued well into the 90s and some of the noughties as well. Yeah, that's the old world, right? And maybe we can talk about that. But the old world was very much like shoulder pads and I don't know, people going out and getting tanked up and Wolf of Wall Street and all of that sort of shenanigans and stuff.
Was
But
that fun for being a young man?
it was fantastic. Central London, single, yeah, money in my pocket. It was really really good. Um, and yeah, it was a good time to be in recruitment. But thank God the market moved on, the industry moved on, because I think that there was a lot of casualties along the way. People were left lying along the way. But yeah, it was a good start in recruitment.
Yeah, young men can get away with it, like in your
Yeah,
20s,
I couldn't do it now. That's
Before
for sure.
before, as a friend of mine says, marriage and children knocks the crack out of you.
And the money, yeah.
And we'll not go down that road.
We won't go down that road. And then sort of, I stayed with that firm for a while. I started off as a junior consultant. I ended up as, I don't know, some kind of director. I was running the show. The boss got bored with his business and went on to something else. But then I was introduced to the infamous James Caan, and it was kind of like, yeah, come and start your own business. And this was one of my consultants working with me had introduced me.
Is this before Hamilton Bradshaw?
Oh, it's way, way, way before. It was
Yeah.
Alexander Mann days, early Alexander Mann days. It was when James was in Tottenham Court Road and driving around in his baby blue Rolls Royce. So yeah, it was way, way before.
Was Alexander Mann his first major exit in the recruitment industry?
Yes, it was his first major exit. The thing is, Alexander Mann as a company started way back. I mean, literally just a couple of years before I got together with him, and I'd started a business and James backed it. So ours was a separate business, but he backed it, gave us the premises. But yeah, years later, Alexander Mann Associates, I think it was, or the whole RPO and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, he did that years after I left working with him. But yeah, it was an education. I mean, it's like I through James, I met with the late great Tony Byrne. That kind of gave me a taste for the recruitment training side. I loved it, and I I was able to develop. This is the thing: working as a recruitment business owner, working with James, I was bringing people into our business that had never worked in recruitment before, and I was getting them up to a level where they were just selling retained assignments, and I loved that bit. I loved seeing the excitement on their face, and I more than I loved doing the deal myself. So yeah, and once I met up with Tony, it was like I got the bug for recruitment training.
That's interesting. So, in hindsight, if you were to have a time machine and go back, do you think if you had have followed on the same vein, would you have been more successful or less successful?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's a great question. Kind of, my kids often ask me, it's like, Dad, why are we so I've coached over the years, and a lot of them are household names in the recruitment industry. But look, this is an interesting one. It's like, how do you judge success? I got a really good, under James, with that first business, Retail Profiles, we built it up to, I think, 6 consultants within 6 months. We were 100% retained. The industry that I'd come from, the highest fee that I was able to get in my previous company was 18%. And that was like a fucking nosebleed if you got to that level. But overnight, when we started Retail Profiles, we went to 30% retained only, and it was successful. But I kind of got more of a kick out of bringing people in. I started getting bored of just being able to go out and close retainers. I got more of a kick out of doing that. So when I went to work with Tony, it wasn't about riches. It wasn't about making loads of money. It was about doing something that I felt passionate about, genuinely passionate about, not the usual BS that people give you. It's like, oh yeah, I love working with people. I really, really liked seeing somebody that had never done this work before and getting them to a level where they actually were very, very good.
The psychology interests me that, years later, when you look back, and you probably could see that in monetary terms, like you could have scaled 1,000 call centers and gone down that road. You might have died of a heart attack, but you could have gone down that road but you chose not to, and you seem genuinely happy about it. And I often have these conversations with my wife. Like, we set up this business a few years ago.
Yeah.
And, I interview people who are my age now. I'm 35, and they've already had an exit. They're on to the next one. And I get a bit of recruitment. I get a bit of recruitment envy from them.
Yeah.
And I find that, and then she sits me down and reins me in, and she's like, look, just check your fucking ego, will you? Like, life is good. You're onto something here. Just kind of follow the stuff that you're enjoying, because you'd be a miserable call center owner.
Oh, absolutely right. No, and your wife's right. I like her already, Dualta. She's absolutely right. It's like just keeping your sanity. I look at some of my contemporaries when I was coming through, and we don't need to name names. They're quite public in our industry. And I look at them and I think to myself, oh, you know what?
I wish you would. It'd be great for the SEO on the
blog. not on this call, we won't. Right? I need a few more Guinnesses inside me before we do that. But we all look at them and we go, do you know what? I see people and they're unhappy. And I genuinely love the work that I do, and I've been able to say that for quite a long time. In recruitment, when I was at the height of my success, and I got phenomenal success, and I was able to buy properties and have a property over abroad. I lived in Spain. My son was kind of brought up there the first couple of years. I had all of that with recruitment, but actually I'm 10 times more happy and satisfied and all of that with the life that I have now and the work that I do every single day.
And so in hindsight, you're actually happier that you made that call. Did it take you a while to come to that realization and battle your own ego, or did you know straight away?
No, do you know what? I knew straight away. I really genuinely did. And I look, it's interesting because you could say, well, with training and coaching and everything else, it actually ticks another ego box. So, yeah, to stand up in front of a room of 500 people or whatever, and get invited to speak in South Africa and India and different places, that kind of, ticks the ego box of a lot of recruiters. If you ask recruiters, would you like to do that? I think at the heart of it, recruiters like to be liked. Well, with the work that I started doing, I got that feedback in a different way. I wasn't placing candidates, but I was developing recruiters and helping recruitment business owners. So I got that feedback, but in a slightly different way.
It's really heartening to hear that there's other alternatives rather than doing James Caan's model of get a bunch of grads in, scale it up, sell it on to another person that's done it better. They'll sell it on to another person that's done better. And then somewhere along the line, someone will exit.
Yeah. And something, Dualta, it's funny because, people talk to me or ask me, people in startups and people at the start of their, recruitment careers. And they'll ask me, is recruitment an industry? Is it a good career? Is it a good place to be? Is it a good place to launch a business? And what I say to them is the skills that you will develop as a recruiter, or running a recruitment business, are so great that even if you decide in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years that it's not for you, I promise you, I guarantee the skills that you will develop over that period will see you good through life, whatever you choose to do. So I've had people that have left the industry, not because of my training or my management, but they've left the industry. They've gone on to be, police officers, or they've gone on and done, I don't know, sort of trading. They can sell, they can empathize, they can communicate. It's like, so I don't think it's just there's a model of success in recruitment, and that's James Caan or others, and then there's and then there's nothing. I think there's a wealth of stuff that this industry is able to give us. And you don't have to stay in recruitment for the rest of your life. There's loads of other stuff, and you've got to find your passion. I think that was the thing that really got me towards training. I loved giving. I loved teaching people. I loved imparting knowledge and then seeing that develop and people take it further. I've coached people that have gone on to be a lot more successful than I ever was.
But it sounds like you take pride in that.
Oh, massive, absolutely massive. And this is the thing. People often will say.
So it's really just about channeling your ego into.
Exactly. It is about channeling the ego. Because people say, oh, if you're a recruitment trainer or coach, I hear, I don't hear it as much now, but I did hear it at the beginning. You must have been a failed recruiter. Those who can't teach or something like that. And that wasn't it for me. It's like, actually, I was very, very successful. I made I was very successful in some people's eyes and in making money, but that wasn't how I judged my success at all. It was how content am I? How comfortable am I? How is it ticking my boxes? And that's why I moved to what I do.
I suppose another way to look at it is what's your effect on the ecosystem around you, and what's your footprint? And it sounds like you've accomplished a lot in that. Let's jump into the training piece.
Okay.
If you were me, what questions would you ask you about that?
I love that question. If I was you, I would say we could take this two ways, Dualta. We could say, okay, what's different about your training to perhaps, or coaching to what else is available? And then the other thing is, can training, how does it affect the person receiving training and receiving coaching? So you could take it one of those two ways, I would suppose.
Okay, so jump into the first one first.
All right. So how's my training different? Well, I think I said earlier on, since I first started, working in recruitment, as you said, 1,000 years ago.
Such a bad person I am.
I've seen a lot of change in the industry. I was laughing the other day because I was trying to explain to my kids what a fax machine was, because I remember when they came out and how I was freaked out by it, because I envisaged documents floating across London Bridge from one office to another. So yeah, a lot has changed in the industry. And now in recruitment training, when I first started, there was just Tony Byrne. Then there were people like Steve Finkel, and these were all American trainers, right? So very, very few British trainers. And then, slowly people like Anne Swain came to the industry. Now, of course,
she's the apps go, yeah.
And lovely, lovely lady, very, very inspirational.
There's a great interview if anybody wants to check it out of hers on the REC Scale Up podcast.
Oh, okay. Listen, I need to check that one out. I'm a great fan of Anne, and we get on very, very well. So yeah, there were very, very few. I think Anne was one of the British ones, and she started her business learning curve, and then a few more came through. But this was years ago, right? And then if I look now, it's like the world and his dad is like, set themselves up as recruitment trainers, and that's great. I'm pleased, because at the end of the day, anything we can do to raise the standards of our industry and help support that, I'm all for. What's different? My difference actually could be my bane, but my difference, I think, is the fact that I was a recruiter. I started off as a junior recruiter in a small independent agency. I only ever worked for 3 recruitment companies, three recruitment companies, and I ended up as a director of all 3 of them. I went from independent to owning my own, to working for a £350 million PLC. I walk the walk and I talk the talk. It's like I sold retained search assignments. I trained my team of researchers to research, pre-digital, but good old school practice, right? And what I bring to the training, I never ever train things like scripts or theory. What I'll teach is stuff that either I've used or I've trained people to use, and then what we've done is refined it and refined it and refined it. So
walk me through what that looks like from the point where you meet an agency owner, the questions that you ask him, to what that looks like from an implementation point of view. Just quickly, just so we can all contextualize it, because sometimes big picture stuff is kind of hard to refine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree. Well, look, one of the biggest things I find, and it does surprise me a little bit, is when I go into a brand new company to either consult or mentor or coach or whatever, the first thing that I look for is, what are the processes, the universal processes that run through this business? So, going to ABC agency, it's like, okay, how do you take a job? How do you take a job from a client? How do you source a candidate? How do you manage the recruitment process? Now, I'm always surprised at how few companies actually have uniformity across the process. And what I mean by that is, like, it's almost, I live down near in Brighton. It's almost like a piece of Brighton rock, with the words Brighton written through it. What I look for is there consistency across a business from consultant to consultant? And I'm amazed at how it's not consistent in so many businesses, i.e., they'll have a consultant maybe that's come from one company and she takes a job in one way, and they'll have another consultant that has come from another company and he does it a different way.
But I could tell you why that is.
Yeah.
Just I would guess anyway, right?
Yeah.
Just from my own limited experience. When I started out, I followed their process.
Yes.
And then when I got better, I started using shortcuts to make sure that I could get things done faster, more efficient. And that was different to the person who beside me who couldn't replicate it.
Yes.
Is that fair summation?
Yeah, no, absolutely, it is fair. the only thing about that though, Dualta, is that from a candidate and a client's experience, right, of that agency, let's say that agency is, if they work with you, they'll have a different experience to if they work with me. Now, what I'm not talking about is personality and our personality and our traits in terms of how we work. But if we're working with a firm, you used to work with Rob Waters, you would say, okay, look, consultant to consultant, there'll be different skill levels, but essentially there's a Rob Waters way. And any client that experiences Rob Waters as a client will know. It's like, okay, there's the Robert Waters way. And if I'm a candidate, consultant to consultant, my experience is going to be fairly uniform.
And I agree. I agree with you. People like me are more designed to set up their own business, and invent their own process. And other people are more designed for the management route. And I know those people, and they've gone through the ranks. And I think you're right. Like because if you're scaling a business, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. But the thought process here is that if I'm then at the next level, I need to be able to teach people the Rob Walters way. Whereas if I'm not doing it, I'm not leading by example, then things get lost and trust is broken, both from the client side and from internally in teams.
From the colleague side. Yeah, it's true. The other thing, and I see this a lot, right? You'll get in some businesses, the principal, the MD or sales director or whatever it is, but the principal characters, the principal business owners, they have their own system. And when they bring in brand new people, those brand new people look at the principal and they go, oh my God, I can't possibly be as good as that person. Because they almost make it look like, it's a flair player. It's like somebody watching Neymar and going, okay, well, yeah, I could be as good as him. It's like, it's a flair player. Now, the problem with flair players is that the individual flair player will be brilliant and attract revenues and all that kind of stuff. But you can't replicate that. You can't scale that easily. So the real skill, and this is part of the reason why I got into coaching. The real skill, I think, as a coach, is breaking down that process, is watching a Neymar and say, okay, well, look, what are the common characteristics? What are the things that I could teach that may not get the next Neymar, but actually, if we follow the same principles, maybe we get a close approximation, And at the very least, anybody experiencing, sorry to use the football analogy, but anyone experiencing that kind of play, you go, okay, well, look, there's a team, aka Barcelona or PSG or whatever. There's a team, there's a way that they play.
And look, I'm real into this stuff as well. And when I look at myself and my faults, which there are many, especially back then. I've probably got worse over the years, if I'm honest. But back then, when I was kind of going, do you know what? I probably don't need to meet this person. I could probably do it there. I was doing shortcuts.
Yeah.
When I look at stuff now on the most scalable recruitment firms that I work with around the world, they're doing the stuff that I was doing in my chair then.
Absolutely.
And I was probably just in the wrong business to start out with in terms of my style. But then I did buy into a lot of their qualitative stuff as well. So I don't know. It does fascinate me that there's different bits, and a lot of the things that we've tried to do is, so we broke down every step of what we do.
Nice.
And my wife documented everything, and then we got our virtual assistants involved. Nice. And then over the years we've given them bits more, a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. So now the point where what I do on a daily basis, Charlotte's gone and have kids for 2 years, so she was able to do that. She can come back in now and get on with like getting us right again. Yeah. But I've been able to just take calls, write content, and do this.
Fantastic.
And that was all through process documentation. So it's not I don't think it's a scalable model, but I think it's more probably suitable to for the better word, lifestyle businesses, which I hate that word, but
yeah, it makes it more efficient. I mean, what you've just described there is a very efficient business. You've been able to, because of Mrs. D's, and I love Mrs. D already. Okay,
yeah, she's great, eh?
Because of Mrs. D's documenting those processes, testing those processes, then presumably, I'm sure this is the way you did it, having your VAs or outsourced assistants practicing those, and then tweaking the system. You've created a very efficient business. You don't need to scale that. You just need to enjoy the benefit that process gives you. And it's funny because a lot of recruitment businesses just never get there. Even big ones never get to that point that it's highly efficient. It hums like a high performance machine.
And I'm obsessed with that. I'm obsessed, but then like it's freed me up to do this podcast, which has enabled me to speak to people who know way more than I do, and then I've got 1,000 other projects that I have to try and get Mrs. D to do now, which she looks at me and she's like, stop having ideas, just stop making our life difficult, like, But
I hope you're paying Mrs. D well, because I feel a headhunt call coming on.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could, I literally, I'd love her to go somewhere else. I'd be delighted, but it's funny. One of the things I'm thinking about this year, Roy, is probably doing something similar to what you've done, but on a smaller scale.
Okay.
I'm quite passionate about helping independent recruiters set up
nice.
and scale, like automate an efficient recruitment business.
Yeah.
And I want to do that in the right way. And what advice would you have to somebody like me who's thinking about that?
That's good. Okay. First of all, I love the mission, because I always talk to people about what's your why. Why would you do that? Why? And the why is really, really important. It's all about, it's our purpose. Because if you haven't got the purpose, everything else is just not sustainable. Imagine, and I say this to recruiters at the beginning of their career, it's like, imagine you are going to be doing this for the next 10 years. And they go, oh no, it's like, okay, it's not the right niche for you then, let's pick a niche a bit more interesting. So the fact that you've got that, I'd say to you that's a tick straight away. Secondly, what advice would I give you? Well, you know what? I think the podcast, and having done my own, that back in 2015, the podcast is such a good way, because every, as you said, and I recognize this myself as well, when I was interviewing people, not necessarily the bigger names, I got those guys, but some of the smaller people that I interviewed, some of the startups that I interviewed, their advice kind of just knocked me back, because I was thinking, actually, I approach it from I've been doing this for 1,000 years, and I'd be speaking to.
You're not going to let that go, are you?
Yeah, never. That's going to be on my tombstone, my friend. But I interviewed a young woman, Natalie Ellis, that had started her recruitment business, and actually she sold it within 2 years of starting for a shed load of money. Maybe I shouldn't have said that if there's any tax people listening, but she was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and I learned more from interviewing her than I did from perhaps some of the bigger names that I interviewed. They'll go nameless. But the point that I'm saying here is that just doing the podcast, yes, it gets you exposure, but actually the data, the information that you are learning from every single call, every single person that you speak to, I think positions you. You're ready now, Dualta. I mean, if you were going to launch that product or that service, I'd say you've probably got as much data as you need, but wow, what a way to go. And the only other point I'd say is, and I think again you've got this already, as long as you start with again, it's back to our why. I start with, I want to serve, I want to give this information value in advance. It's not about, okay, I need to create a product or service that makes a lot of money. Build the product that your people want. So if it's startups, it's like, find out what is their pain, what are the things that stop them. Let's make that as easy as possible for them, and then the sales come. I promise you, it's like stuff comes from it.
I look at those things. So I think, like, when Charlotte comes back next month, we will create more documents and kind of go into it. But
Okay.
it's funny when I look at things that people's pain points, the virtual assistant and automation piece is definitely one.
Yeah.
So being able to do more on that.
Yeah.
I think the content and being able to create meaningful, authentic content is another piece.
Yeah.
Being able to distribute that content effectively, whether it's through paid or organic, is another piece.
Yeah.
And then it's putting that together with old school practices that still work.
Yes. Listen, I wish I could throw in a hallelujah, because this is, I tell this to people all the time. They go, oh, it's all about digital. It's all about digital. It's like, yes, of course it is. Use the tools to get us exposure and distribution, but don't come so far away from, those good best practice skills that we learned, which are communication. It's like, if it's all about digital and it's all about online and you can't speak to people, then I'm sorry. It's like, I don't care, how good your message is. If you can't speak to people one-to-one, face-to-face, know the, skills of being able to persuade and listen and all of those things, then your idea is dead in the water. So you're one of the first people I've spoken to that says, yeah, you need to combine these things in order for it to be good.
So I had Tris on yesterday, Revel, and
I listened.
and he was really interesting, and I was saying, look, I just need more calls into my diary. Like, literally, if I get more calls with recruiters, I could place more people. And he's like, you sound like that's just like call center, but for a message, and you hate call centers. And I was like, oh no, don't get it wrong here. I'm into media and stuff, but it is, as we said, like, it's use every weapon that's available, and combine them all in a logical step-by-step process that gives you the best value. And I'm not sure if any of us have, perhaps you have, but a lot of us have that cracked from start to finish in merging all the different angles together.
No, look, I haven't got that cracked. For me, it's a work in progress. But, I would say,
because things change, right? Things change every day in terms of what's out there.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, and you know this. It's like, I've made those podcasts back in 2015. It's like stuff that I would have mentioned in the podcast, or even my guests would. It's like they're out of bloody date as soon as the thing is published.
I wanted to jump into that with you, because. So for anybody that doesn't know, Roy was doing the content stuff that I'm doing now in 2015, and I only discovered this afterwards, and I was halfway through, and somebody tagged in a few things, and then I looked and I was, oh God, he got a real early adoption on this, and then I listened to it, and I thought, oh, this is quite choreographed. The world's changed now. Would you do some of it different now, Roy?
Oh, first of all, you've encouraged me to maybe blow the dust off of my podcasting chops and get back into it. Yeah, of course I would. It's interesting. Back in 2015, if you and I had gone to market and said, "Oh, podcasting," people would have looked at us, and they did, looked at me like I was an alien. Like, oh, what is this? It's like, and I even to get guests, it's like guests will be going, well, how does it work? Do you come to my office? Do you you're going to how does it? And there was a lot of it was really, really bloody hard. So in that format, we just used a classic interview format. We're going to ask these questions. That way my guests were able to prepare, not script their answers, because I said to them, don't do that. But they knew what they were going to be asked, and they knew the format, and they knew what it sounded like, because they could listen to every other episode that we'd run. And it was easy to produce. And actually, I say easy to produce. It was a pain in the ass to produce, and very, very expensive. It's probably one of the reasons why I stopped doing it, because it took up too much of my time, and I was trying to do other things as well. But yeah, I would change it. I love, this is good, because we're having a conversation, and I know in that what you get is some good stuff, and sometimes some stuff that maybe other people haven't heard, or a side of Roy Ripper or any of your guests that like, oh, I didn't know that about him, and I think this is a lot more like a natural conversation.
Well, when it's not choreographed, there's something you have to realize. There's stuff that you don't know that you know.
Yes.
That I know that people out there don't know.
Yes.
And whether we're having a natural conversation or not, I'm trying to grab out that little bit of information that I can take and go throw it into my own business.
Yeah.
And go, thank you, Roy Ripper.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
And I suppose I'm asking you about the training piece on that, because that's your thing, and it's something that I'm interested in. When you're putting that together for people, and I get, you go in, you analyze it, you see what their processes are. I think we went off course on that question.
No way.
You then deliver it. Have you developed any type of like manuals that you've sold or video courses that you've done? Is that a direction you've gone down or will go down?
Yeah, no, I have been down that road, and I do have. I mean, products. What I find, Dualta, is that different people want different things. So I've got a book, Recruitment Blueprint. It's available on Amazon, and people go and buy it. And it's a nice.
It's got great reviews.
Thank you. One or two weren't so comfortable. But,
moving swiftly on.
Just one in prep. But some people like to just read a book. It's like, okay, good, and it's a inexpensive way of getting information. I love books, right? I'm a prolific reader of other people's books, so books are good. Then some people are, I want to listen to the audio. I want to listen to it whilst I'm commuting to work or on the treadmill. So podcasts are good. So I've done podcasts. Some people like video training, and obviously I was one of the founders of Recruitment Juice back in the day. I did my training apprenticeship with Tony Byrne, the original 30 Steps recruitment series on video, VHS cassettes. So I know that that's powerful too. Some people like the ability to be able to, watch a video, do it at their own pace, self-learning, etc. Then there are others that want to have that live experience, whether it's a group seminar or whether it's a one-to-one coaching. So it's all these different things. And I do all of those things. What I've done is I've kind of pulled back on maybe the audio on the podcast, but and I've got some great stuff for you. It's like, at some stage I'd love to sit down with you and talk to you about one of the things that I'm teaching and coaching people on now is a thing called circular omnipresence, which is taking one piece of content and then repurposing that content in a systematic way, right? So it's not just, okay, well, the latest digital marketing guru says this. It's a systematic way for recruitment businesses. Take that one piece of content, repurpose it, put it across all of these different platforms, because this is where people will try and find you, and then get them coming back to the main place that you want them to come, which in my opinion will be your website. So
I wonder, is it your website? Depends what you're selling.
Well,
I sometimes find I'll jump into this if I can.
Sure.
So I suppose I'm all into the omnipresent stuff, and on my reading list is Gary V's solution for
perfect.
it.
Yeah, good.
And there's another guy.
Porterfield does some really good stuff on this as well. I think she calls it Blitz campaign. And then Brendan Bouchard was the guy back in 2014 that first coined the phrase circular viralocity. All good kind of sources. But
so I think for anybody that's listening, how you do this quickly is do a podcast, video yourself on the podcast. I don't like videoing myself on the podcast.
Some people don't.
I find it makes people a little bit more awkward. And they're not as comfortable. And I might be a little bit conscious of that myself. So I just prefer to be able to do it like this. But so what you do is you use a tool called Repurpose.io.
Yes.
That brings it to YouTube. You do a video intro. You get them to do a video intro, and I haven't done any of this yet, but this is the research I've done. So you mash that together. You do an outro and your thoughts on it, and then you've got 3 or 4 pieces of video. You then grab the tiny bits of highlights from it and you repurpose that using a thing called Wave. And you
Yes.
put that across LinkedIn, Facebook, and probably Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think whenever this goes, you tweet about it. But I'm not a big Twitter person, so it's not on my agenda right now.
Sure.
Then to be omnipresent, you obviously need the person that's involved in it to do all the same and to react and get that out there on all their channels.
Yeah.
You then need to work on, you probably have to have a Facebook group, a Facebook page, and then you need to get some paid stuff done to get the real like brilliant bit of it out there to draw people in, so then they become part of the funnel to go back to the place where you want them to. And as you said, that's a website. For me, if it was the coaching thing, it would be the website. If it's to speak to recruiters to move to New York, or wherever we're putting them, then I would almost like to go straight back to LinkedIn to WhatsApp, and straight into a call. So I'm putting all these pieces together kind of on the hop. It's not, we haven't got it all down yet, but I think if anybody wants to replicate it, that's the easiest way I can see. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong at all, Dualta.
Oh yeah, you'd create a blog on LinkedIn as well, and do that as well.
Exactly. You look. There's a very simple system. It's like some of the things that you said there. I would totally, and there's different forms of doing this kind of viral stuff. I think there's a specific form for recruitment businesses that I think I've worked out, and at some stage I'd really like to share that with you. And if you then want to share it with your listeners, we'll go ahead. But the point that I would make about recruitment businesses, a lot of people think, okay, I'm on LinkedIn and that's enough, or I'm on Instagram and that's enough, or they'll say something like, oh, I'm not going to go on Instagram because I don't get it, I don't use it. I think the question to ask is, where is your audience? If they're candidates, where do your candidates go to? If your clients, where are your clients? Where do they sit? And you need to engage with people wherever they are. The other thing that I'd say is that these different platforms, I mean, you and I both know Periscope was like the big thing, and then that kind of died down, and Google Hangouts and everyone was doing that, and Twitter was big and then it's not so big, and Instagram is the fastest growing. All of these different things come into play, and their algorithms and their rules change. So, for example, I know a lot of people that started to build their business on Facebook. And then all of a sudden, Facebook, lovely free Mark Zuckerberg, and then all of a sudden the bastards start, charging you and not even putting your stuff in front of your connections, right? You had to pay them to get that. So my mantra on this is go fishing, go hunting on all the different platforms, but as quick as you can, get them onto your platform. And that's either, as you said, get a phone number, get a phone conversation going if you're a recruiter and it's a candidate, or at the very least, get an email. Because if you've got an email, then you can start to nurture a relationship with that person.
And let me jump in right there. So I had a guy called Mark Lundberg who reached out to me. He's going to come on the podcast. He's a really well known sourcing strategist.
Nice.
And he listened to my talk with Tris yesterday, and he said, yeah, look, you've got a few holes in what you're up to.
Right.
Here's what I advise you to do. So, and if anybody wants to implement this in terms of how you go about the Omni thing in a logical way, use one of the automation tools like PeopleCamp or LinkedIn Helper to get the emails off LinkedIn. And then Trish said, reach out to people and ask them if they want to be involved as well in terms of getting the mailing list. So you get the buy-in for the mailing list on that. You then use all the emails that you're taking from LinkedIn and you take that off, and then you use that data to target people with Facebook ads, with all the. So then that's how you can kind of know what's what. And within those automation tools, you can put people into different pools. So like clients, and then they go into a funnel that you target them on. Maybe mine is come on the podcast and talk about your business and sooner or later they become a client. And then candidates is maybe the funnel is selling the dream of LA or New York or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever's applied to your own, but there's a linear process involved in each strand.
Yes.
And I thought that's fascinating. Like all the wee pieces can be put together. It's going to be interesting when somebody puts all that together for somebody really quickly.
I might be in that position soon, but
that's
you know
brilliant.
what, the only thing that I would add to that, and just your proposed guest, the guy that's coming on, the only thing that I would add to that is these are recruitment businesses or consultants. Our first language is not marketing and content and repurposing and anything else. Our first language is recruiting. And so for a lot of recruitment business owners, what I hear is, Roy, simple. It's like, I keep reading stuff where they say, I've got to be writing a blog every day. I can't write a blog. Or, Roy, everyone tells me I should be doing video or podcasts or whatever. It's like, I can't do these things. I can't do these things. I think what it starts with is, first of all, we as an industry need to get away from sell. Here's my job. Are you interested? Come and call me. Or these are the services we offer, Mr. Clients. It's like, I'm happy to come in into your office and talk to you. It's like, we've got to get away from sell, and more into put value out there. Just keep giving value. People want to know, like, and trust us. And people that listen to this podcast know, like, and trust Dualta because they their phone, they have you in their car. It's like you are familiar to them, and they also, you're bringing them value. You're bringing them value in terms of the guests, so they will immediately trust you. So if I was and I'm thinking, wow, America and 30 years ago, 30 years ago, I'd have been beating a path to your door. I would beat a path to your door now because I know you, or I feel like I know you from the stuff that you've put out. And you haven't sold to me. You haven't said, oh, Roy, I've got this job. It's like, Roy, listen to this, listen to this. You're now a trusted advisor. And I think recruitment businesses, we've got to get to that point, but without making life really difficult for them, And that's why I'm down to this, create one piece of content and I'll show you with very little automation the specific steps you should do as a recruiter. And most of it's down to pick your main channel. And for most people, it's LinkedIn. But what can we do there? And listen, we could talk about this for ages. I love it. We
could. And one of the things that we realized is that we actually only lived down the road from each other before we started recording. So I want to get a round table together in the South.
Okay.
I want us to put together a list of topics that we can talk about, and we'll get Jonathan Foyne involved to video it.
Yeah.
And we'll try and get as much good stuff out there as possible. So I'll be tapping into your network of the most interesting people in the South.
Oh, there's a few of us. I think they've all moved away from the bright lights of London and come down. As soon as you start having kids and families, it's like, well, okay, I've done London or I've done the big cities. Let me go down to London by the sea, whether it's Arundel or Brighton or every other. But listen, on the roundtables, I would love to do that. I really would, Dualta. I think as soon as you get interesting people around a table talking about subjects they like, you get gold. And if I was invited to be part of that, I'd be honoured.
Brilliant. We absolutely will. I just have to persuade Jonathan to drive down now.
I'm sure we can.
Shout out to Jonathan.
On him. Don't worry. He'll love that. He'll love that.
Yeah,
he's a good guy.
He will. One of the things that we will talk about when we meet up and do that is top performers. And it's an area that you've studied intently. But as a kind of final question, because I know I'm keeping you here for a long time, what separates them? What separates them apart? Do you bracket them into any personality traits? Can you identify them from early on? Like, what can we do to get more out of the people that we have?
It's a great question. And look, if we had loads and loads of time, I'd break down every single. the simple truth
It's
is,
another podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's another part, and we can do that. I'm happy to do that. But look, in a really simple way, what I would say is, yeah, I've studied success in recruitment for the 30 plus years that I've worked in it. I've worked, and that's not me. I can't say to you, oh yeah, no, I was the best and I was super. I was okay and I made money, but I've worked with the best. I've worked alongside them, or I've coached them. I've coached people. One guy, and I do remember this, he was 24 years old and his average fee was the same as his age. So his average fee was 24k, and he was doing not just one deal every quarter or whatever. He was doing, on average, 1.5 to 2 deals every single month. So I've worked with some good people. What I've seen is there's a real difference between the recruiter that invoices or generates 100k versus the recruiter that's generating 300, 500 and plus. And it comes down to some really, like simple things. It's like they think differently. They have a different physiology, so their energy is different. And I can't even compete with some of these guys. They have morning routines. They set their days up for success. They don't do what a lot of us do, which is as soon as they wake up in the morning, check in with their phone. They don't do that. They start off their day prepping their days for success, focusing in on the 3 things or 2 things or 5 things that they want to have achieved that day before they even open up their phones and their inbox and everyone else's agenda. Loads of other stuff. Yes, they think differently, they act differently, they behave differently, but it's not that they're more intelligent, because I've met 100k billers that are definitely more intelligent than these people.
Oh no, thinking can get in the way of things.
Guilty. Absolutely right. They don't overthink it. It's like they know these are the things.
You'd have $100 million recruitment firm if you weren't an overthinker.
Exactly. Definitely, and my kids will be pleased with that. They've got things like that purpose that we talked about. It's like, what's your why? It's like, why do you do this? They're so clear on that. Process. I mean, we could spend a whole bloody episode on that. They've licked process. They know they do A, B, and C, and they do it every single time. They don't cut corners. And I've been guilty of that.
Yeah,
I was
hands up guilty.
Lazy man's recruitment.
Yeah.
And then the final piece is persuasion. I mean, these are masters of persuasion and not selling. It's not the 80s kind of, car salesman type of thing. It's persuasion, and they study this. They make it. It's almost like their what's the word? It's their yoga. It's their exercise. This is what they do. They study these subjects. And I think you asked me, just to wrap this up, you asked me one question earlier on, which was, what's the difference between maybe, training and coaching and all those kinds of things. These people, right? These 500k billers, like, and I just use that as a catch-all for them. These successful people, these aren't people that you train. Okay, these are people that are actually, they do self-learning. So it's not about training somebody like that. Training is something that you do to people. Coaching is something that you work alongside them, but learning is the thing that these guys do. They'll go out and get it from any source. And that's why I love working with them. I really, really do. So yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a long-winded so you can tell I get passionate about.
Hey, no, great stuff. We're going to jump into all that. We're going to work out a bit of a thing so we can get this round table done right. And let this be, I'm going to send you the audio of this so you can make this your comeback podcast.
Nice.
And you can just add a little intro to it. And then I'm hoping Roy Ripper's podcast is going to be back on.
Recruiters Live Lounge. Yeah, I would love to do that. I feel like Rocky. We feel like we're making Adrian, Dualta.
So I'm Creed in this.
You're Apollo Creed. Yeah, absolutely. You're not Adrian.
No, cool. You're Adrian. All right. Thanks very much. Right. We'll talk again soon.
Listen, my absolute pleasure, Dualta. Lovely to speak with you.
Massive thank you to Roy Ripper for coming on the podcast. What a legend he is. What a lovely guy too. And I'm so excited to be able to collaborate with him on a couple of ideas that we've come up from this chat that we had. Really engaging and open character. And you can see why the recruitment community has so much goodwill for Roy. And I just was really impressed by him, and I'm very grateful for him for coming on the podcast. So very excited to do a round table with him and Barry the lawyer and a few other impressive characters in the south of England, so we can get some great content out there and take the information out of the greatest minds in agency recruitment and then help you all develop your businesses from it. I'm learning a lot from these type of guys. I hope you are too. If you're enjoying the podcast, please hit me up on LinkedIn and tell me. Sometimes it can feel like I'm speaking into space. So every time we get a little nudge, hey, thanks for that, keep them coming. Do this different, try this, get this person on. I'd like to come on. You know, any type of feedback would be great. And I appreciate every one of you. So have a great weekend and happy hunting.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.